Well, look, at least we caught it early this time.
True. I did the same thing for Meticulous Talks on Saturday. Are we good now?
It
Anemoy?
depends.
Good.
Anemoy has to say something?
There we go. Yeah, now we've got sound. Okay, good deal. Yes,
Yeah, we're
and
good.
I unmuted it myself so I could hear. Okay. Uh, good evening, everybody. And welcome to Commentary's Magic Stream on today's Sunday, October 30th, 2022. I am, as always,
Okay,
Eric
wait,
Paz.
hold on.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You can do the
Hold on.
thing.
Watch him not be able to reconnect.
That would be amazing.
Our cat, and
There we go.
I'm not even saying my name. Continue.
Yeah. I don't think anyone heard what happened the first time we attempted that, but Aracat is traveling right now and literally joined the chat server the exact moment it was time to say his name. So
I had to do a repeat performance. It's never as good the second time.
it was still pretty good. It was a good meme. So there will be a lot to talk about at the end of the stream as far as the upcoming events at Ciderfest, including the panel/activity that we're doing, which will be especially fun for anyone who's going to be there in person. But one thing that is pretty cool about Ciderfest is it runs an annual Harmony tournament. Well, it's been annual the last 2 years anyway. We'll see if it keeps going. And thinking back to all those old cards, some of which we used to play with, and some of which we've opened 20 copies of, and they sit in a box somewhere, never touched, because who on earth designed this card?
I believe you mean 400 copies.
Press pass?
Rainbow Shine.
Well, people have been bolstering your collection of that. Anyway, thinking back to all those old cards, kind of brought back some interesting memories. In the words of Styx, some happy, some sad. I think of Pony Friends and the dreams we had. I'm pretty sure that's how that went.
Some's happy, some sad. I think of Styx, and then I get mad.
That's pretty good. And as we think about these cards from current sets, previous sets, what have you, it's interesting to try to put yourself back in the situation when that card was brand new, when the set it was in was first released, and what that card did to the meta overall. Not necessarily meta impact, but impact on the game. There are some cards we can think of that absolutely made the game better when they were released. There are other cards we can look at, for example, everything on the ban list, that made the game worse at some point in their life. For the purpose of this stream, we're going to be ignoring two categories of cards. Let me just confirm this really quickly. Yes, we are ignoring two categories of cards. We are not talking about, well, with one exception for Aura, we are not talking about print and play cards. And we will not be talking about cards on the ban list. But otherwise, we're going to share some opinions and get some insight into what the others here think as well. And we'd love to hear from chat on what cards had a positive impact on the game and what cards had a negative impact on the game overall. And for the record, these are not necessarily unanimous decisions or selections. Each of us have written our own. And so there will be, I'm sure, much fighting and shaking of fists and hissing. Right, Aura? Perfect.
You said that like that wasn't going to happen anyway.
I said it exactly like I intended to say it. So let's get underway. All right. I am unfairly biased towards this card. I will admit that right out the gate.
At least we're being honest.
However, I still feel like this card did exactly what it was supposed to do. And the reason that I'm unfairly biased is I basically pitched this design. We were sitting there in the Friends Forever playtesting and looking at what had happened since Sequestria had come out, and it was purple everywhere. The problem is you don't want to just invalidate other mains completely with a starting problem. And you also don't want to make something that is so aggressive that it also just invalidates other non-troublemaker control strategies. But Lacking Lesson Plans, I think, hit a good medium. It's a good stat line where it is not terribly difficult to confront from either player, but also not terribly easy to confront from either player, at least compared to other problems. And it gave confront to flip mains another avenue of being able to work around going second and losing a die roll. How many of us have played a confront to flip main back in the Sequestria meta at any point, lost the die roll, and basically lost the game on the spot?
Yeah.
It just happens sometimes.
I don't play confront to flip mains, play burb instead.
Yeah, no, do that.
Be part of the problem.
So Lacking was a card that addressed this in that it didn't invalidate the effect of the Troublemaker, but it did provide a method early on in the game, or whenever the card would come up, of being able to work around a Troublemaker wall. Now, I think you could make an argument that maybe Lacking Lesson Plans and other cards like it contributed to part of the issue that we're facing right now, which is people just don't fight Troublemakers a lot anymore, at least if their deck is not designed to do so. They just find a way around. That being said, considering the context of when this card came out, with all the Tempest and Grubber and Changeling Mimics that was out there, it was really, really difficult to not want to run at least one copy in a confront to flip deck, or even a deck that wanted to aggro early, if you thought there was even the slightest chance of facing control in your tournament.
I mean, the 4/6 is still not bad by any means, and if you want to confront it all, you're probably running a pair of these.
I mean, we still see a lot of aggro decks now that run 2 copies of Lacking Lesson Plans because, hey, it may only be 1 bonus, but how many AT is it worth for you not to have to worry about a Troublemaker there? How much digging through your draw deck to try to find an answer? This is after Dilemmas had come out. This is after we had already seen events that could let people bypass Troublemakers. So it wasn't like this was the first of its effect. But it was the first one where you could choose to slow yourself down relative to the preferred line of, like, concerning cutie mark. And it would be okay. Yeah, Prison Light says, unless Tempest calls her boss. Although finding a Storm King with Tempest Shadow was a pretty unusual opener. Okay, so who has differing opinions on this? Who says that I'm an idiot and this card is actually the worst possible thing for the game? Cheese?
I love how you went directly to Cheese.
I knew who was gonna say it!
I mean, I think you're right, but
He doesn't want you to be right, is what
I, as a control player, want to lock everything down. So anything that prevents lockdowns is bad.
Remember when
this your
Cheese
user?
wasn't a control player?
Is
Yes.
this your user story?
Yes, this is my user story.
As a control player.
All right, next card. Night Glider Overpowering. This card peaked at, what was it, like $60 a piece?
Maybe
I
more.
think, yeah. I don't remember it being more than 60. I'm sure someone paid more, but I don't know.
This thing was ridiculously expensive, and that made it very challenging to actually pick up your full play setup because it was also in the last large set we had released. That being said, I believe that Night Glider overall, in spite of her rarity, in spite of the difficulty in actually getting her, was a positive addition to the game at the point that she came out. You were seeing a shift towards control. There were still a number of combo decks that were out there. Blue had been an aggro color for a while, but didn't really have a clear identity beyond I'm going to move stuff. And it turns out that that's only good to a point. You had numerous blue characters that would have extra power in face-offs or would have competitive before it was keyworded. And you could easily end up swarming in a particular problem and winning by a huge margin, but the thing is that didn't do anything for you. So Blue's identity was one of, I'm going to move and be efficient at doing that, but that doesn't really help you close out the game when you've got far more troublemaker walls coming up and large confront requirement problems. There was a big shift in the stats that you started seeing on problems from Absolute Discord to EO. And Night Glider gave Blue an identity. It said, all right, if we're going to win, we're going to win big. And Night Glider is far from the first card to actually say that. There are numerous cards that have been printed since then that also include this sort of text on it. And it turned what could otherwise be a relatively lackluster keyword or lackluster defining feature of the color into, if not an exploitable winning strategy, one that you could build around. And so you started seeing blue decks that would overcommit to particular problems, which created more interesting face-offs and didn't have people playing to razor-thin margins. You had decks like Octavia Blue, which, Cheese, I remember you talking about trying to build that when that was being theory crafted.
Yeah.
Running alongside RTO as well, and using cards like Aloe and other power boosters to just get huge amounts of power to take advantage of Night Glider.
And other white cards, yeah.
Yeah. So. Yes, it is probably pushed, especially relative to the time it came out, but it itself pushed the color in a particular direction. And I think that at that point in time, that's kind of what Blue needed. Other thoughts?
I think it did its job. I mean, it still sees play.
I mean, there's a lot of Hot Wings decks in the Invitational right now. Are there any of them that aren't running Night Glider? I'll take a look. I don't know off the top of my head. But
I mean, blue aggro? No. Like, there's blue that doesn't run it, but...
Right, I mean the Hot Wings list specifically, though.
Yeah. I think if it said when you win a face-off, then Farm would consider running it. I like the 2-flip is terrible, but...
If it said when you win a face-off by 5 or more power, there would have been so many combo decks built around this card. You just want to play showdowns again. Stop trying to make one. Stop trying to make one pace. Stop it. Stop it.
One pace is already built. He's just trying to make it good again.
Yeah.
Okay. So, 2 cards. Personal opinion. I think they were good. What do I think was bad? Probably the stuff that Cheese thinks was good.
Yeah.
No, what was bad was literally every other card except those two.
Okay, this card right here
It's so good.
is
Yeah, but no,
is inexcusable.
yeah, actually screwed this card.
The problem with this card is not the fact that it is a, high statted confront requirement card with no bonus. Like that's fine. We had seen high confront requirement cards with low bonus before. It's whatever. The problem is that this was an example of moving the game away from its intended way of being played and pushing people in a direction that became either less interactive or unhealthily interactive. In this case, Control up until this point had not fully embraced the lockdown strategy yet. There were some decks that tried to do it, but they were mostly there to try to also play like anti-combo things with Trixie and Orange Disruption and Hand Disruption as well. But Control up until that point had really been, I'm going to try to slow down my opponent enough that I can be ahead by the time the game ends. It was difficult to get a full lockdown, and you didn't really have a huge reward for doing so. You could play Photo Finish, but Photo Finish was a friend, and friends were a liability. And even more so a liability when this set came out. Blackmail turned that on its head. It punished your opponent for doing what the game wanted them to do, which was to go after problem face-offs, and it punished you for doing anything to build up your own aggressive board state. Instead, it said you need to dedicate every resource possible to making sure that person on the other side of the table cannot play the game. And if you do so, I'll give you a cookie.
I'll give you a cookie every
I like
time you successfully do
cookies.
that.
I know you like cookies. I've played this card numerous times. I also like cookies. But those cookies were baked bads.
I think all of us here have been guilty of using this card in a deck.
Sure.
It's a good
Or
card.
live.
Why wouldn't you? It gave you no choice. If you were playing Control, you were running Blackmail. If you were running Blackmail, the level of control you were running also increased. It created this negative feedback loop within deck construction that just pushed things away from a, hey, let's see who can push forward more, and more a, you shall not pass type mode.
I like Lord of the Rings, though.
I like Lord of the Rings too, but Gandalf had issues.
Yes, I've had 1 point, but about a second. He knows about third turn, right?
That's for the Photo Finish that you have at home, while this is also in play.
Yep.
Fourth turn?
This is to say nothing of the fact that you can now get this problem into play on turn 2 by running Skystar plus Party Science and having a Discord in your opening hand.
12-point final question. Do you think he knows about that one?
All the poor little hobbitses. Okay, Cheese, do you want to counterpoint here?
I think this makes Control decks not run out the clock as much. And I think that's good. Like, Control needs a way to score points.
That's a fair point. If people were trying to run the true lockdown style of Control before this, which had been attempted a little bit, given that Photo Finish was very fragile, having a problem that would let you continue to advance the board or advance the point state is, yeah, I can see that, I guess. But I still don't feel like Blackmail ever actually ended up getting people to 15 points. So it didn't, at least not until we started adding time onto game length.
Got you closer to 15.
But that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It doesn't save any time. All it does is give you a slightly larger gap when time is actually called.
Depending on the game, like I had plenty of games where I was able to double confront for the win because I've had blackmail points. Although, like in most games, blackmail didn't even come out. So
I suppose that's fair. And it does have a better impact in Swiss matches, I will say that much. It does give you an actual win condition in Swiss matches. Or I'm sorry, not Swiss. Not Swiss. Top cut.
Yeah.
Tier 3. So. Okay, second card. I think Cheese actually agrees with me on this one.
Yeah.
I think the worst part about this one is they made this a promo.
I would really like an explanation for why that happened as well. Like, here is a card that we think is good for the game overall and increases everyone's fun. We'll give it to people who participate in regular events at their local game store. What?
Now, be fair, those didn't get distributed.
No, they did. We had
Why
some.
do I have like 11 of them then?
Because I have 800 of them.
I didn't get these from you.
Yeah, I didn't get mine from you either.
I don't remember where I got mine.
So the problem, you phrased it very well earlier, right? The issue with this card is timing.
Yeah. It's happens at the very first. Like, you have 0 chance to do anything. It happens before anyone even gains priority.
Right. This is the first set where immediate cards were a thing, which meant that the amount of removal and the colors that you could play removal that could affect this on your opponent's turn were very few and were very far between. And while it can be perceived as a card that was designed to stop problematic play strategies like banking for 5 or 6 turns and then comboing off, far more often what would happen is you would have a player who would bank for 1 or 2 turns and would then get immediately punished by an opposing deck who was running AT generators of some sort, like All Team Organizer or Daring Do Poster, who would still be able to capitalize on all the action tokens on their turn, and you wouldn't be able to do anything because you weren't playing those cards. And now you just lost 2 turns worth of momentum. This game has always been one of momentum. Losing 2 turns is like a death sentence. You thought Philomena was a better designed example of this.
Yeah. Philomena, it's like you have your whole turn to decide what to do with your AT. And you can keep 2 of them? 3 of them?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
2.
Yeah, 2. It's like, no, you can't bank up 50 AT to combo, but if you did, you can spend it.
True. So, Jerkface, I think, was the first example that we'll have today of a card which maybe had one particular design intent and then worked completely against it.
Yeah, my favorite example of just like how badly it can affect games is you went second, you banked first turn because like there's nothing you could do first turn, and lol, your opponent plays this turn too. It's like, okay, I'm going into my second turn, I have 2 AT, and my opponent already is like confronting a problem and setting up, and I can't do anything. And that's just such a huge momentum shift that early in the game. And so it can force you to take just bad plays. And there's no value in those plays or like interesting gameplay mechanic or anything. It's just, I have to do this in case my opponent plays on even ground. And I've had games where I had to do that.
Sure. I think Ara's talked about that before, and you've probably talked about it too, where just the threat of uneven ground even existing within a format is enough to cause people to build their decks and play their decks differently.
Yeah. Like in Swiss rounds where like you don't know what people are running, it's like, oh, well, they're running blue and they're running one of the blues that can play at turn 2. I have to worry about it.
That's a good point. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. I don't need upsies anymore.
I didn't even
Yes, you do.
include it. Okay, I think I'm next. So good cards. Rushed Makeover. So what I really like about Rushed Makeover is it makes so many more deck strategies viable. Like anything that needs 3 colors, or even some things that need 2 colors and don't particularly want to rely on friends, have a really good way to get entry. It's essentially free. There's even some ways to make it technically like an AT generator. Like if you have Rainbow Shine.
Yeah.
But
or reveal it was the spell for that.
Yeah,
or
spell for that, or yeah. And it just really, like, I think there's decks that just would not be viable without it. And it's not overpowered. It's not like, oh, you can be in every color all at once. It's like, no, you get a color for free.
Is it okay for certain generic entry cards to just be objectively better than others?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's different. So I think the things to compare this against would be motivational speech.
I'm going to direct your attention to Trading Traditions here.
As something that's better than everything else, yeah. And it's basically strictly better than motivational speech. There are a few situations where it's not, but pretty much all situations it is. And maybe that's fine.
I think the balancing factor here is the fact that the color lasts just through the turn.
Yeah, it's not permanent.
And you can only run 3 copies of this card.
Yeah.
It is the best entry 3 times over the course of the game, and past that point, you're going to have to do something else.
Yeah, I think that I have a deck in Invitationals that runs both this and motivational speech.
It's probably also worth noting the fact that this thing flips for half the power of the original Makeover is also relevant.
Yeah.
You don't just get... The game has really shied away from just giving people free 6 flips and 7 flips.
It's like, oh, it's an event, its power doesn't matter. It's like, not quite true.
Ivory, thoughts?
Power absolutely matters.
No thoughts, head empty?
Yeah. Bring back the old Makeover.
What?
What?
Explain.
No.
Just gonna drop a bad take like that out there and then not back it up?
Correct.
You need to go post it on Twitter.
Clearly.
That's where bad takes belong.
I'll pay $20 to be verified.
Anyway, next card?
Yeah.
Katajac. I think is a good card. So the primary reason here is that it makes decks that go wide have to actually think rather than just, no, I go wide and that's all that matters. It's both in the deck construction and when playing against this card, you have to be like, no, I actually can't just play out everything every turn. There has to be some thought there. And when it does hit, it's not particularly unfair. There are things you can do, but like no one's ever even... I've never seen a deck actually do it. to like protect your own stuff and get rid of everything else.
Batajack.
Yeah, Batajack. It's a theoretical thing. No one's done it. And I think it's pretty good. Like, yeah, it's big and diligent, but generally she actually gets removed pretty quickly if she does stick around.
Yeah, if she's even selected by you when you're deciding what you're keeping.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, like, so often it's just like, this is not really the best card to keep.
That being said, if you do decide to keep it, I think you just put players into like a blind rage because all they see is a card that says Applejack and Diligent on it, and everything just turns red.
Exactly.
That's a good point. It's odd that the board wipe that could perhaps favor one person innately more in this case, because you get an extra 5 power body out of it, is one that is more fair. And I think a lot of that has to do with the simultaneity rules and the fact that you have to make your choices first.
Yeah. And it's also because, like, the kinds of decks this go in, this also hits troublemakers. Like, if you have a troublemaker wall up, it's going down partially.
A bunch of supporting resources. Also, you're going to have to make tricky choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this is much more fair than, like, Party of One or, I guess Cornered is pretty fair.
Yeah, Cornered's pretty fair. Okay, that's a fair point.
Now let's go to some unfair cards. Party Hard. This card has never been used in a good way. Like, not once. Supposedly it's like, oh, well, I'm sacrificing my friends for, some card drawing to get rid of your hand a bit. But what actually happens is either I steal your friends and then get rid of them, or I just make a bunch of useless tokens and then get rid of them. And, oh wait, now your hand's empty and you can't do anything in response. Oh, and my hand is full. Just, you gain so much card advantage out of this that any deck that it goes in is going to optimize for that, and it just gets dumb real quick. Back in its worst form was Pinky, I forget her actual subtitle, but the
main 6 party planners.
Oh yeah, it wasn't just Pinky, it was main 6. But yeah, the party planners. I steal all your friends and then retire all your friends and then get rid of all your friends.
All of your friends and then retire all of your friends.
I think that's bad and leads to NPEs.
Exactly. And like Pinky herself, or not Pinky, whatever, Party Planners itself wasn't necessarily like the bad part of that. Now there's other ways that you can retire the friends, and so that's why Party Planners was banned. But like if Party Planners had said friends can't leave play, she would have been totally fine. It's really Party Hard that is painful.
That's a good point. There's a lot of ways that I think you could have tweaked this card to make it a little more tolerable. You could have put a cap on the number of friends that could have been retired, and which would also put a cap on the cards drawn and discarded. You could have increased the cost of it, or it could have been there in a situation where token friends weren't really a thing and stealing effects weren't nearly as common. And the latter one is kind of true. It came out in EO. We didn't have token friends until High Magic, so
yeah, when this card came out, I don't think it was that crazy.
And orange-pink was not a good color combination back then. Would have been much better if it had Soprano in the proper color. I'm not angry. But yeah, I agree with you, especially with the main 6 thing. we've had numerous streams about it and posted an entire, thesis on why Main 6 ended up getting banned. And the big thing came down to the presence of cards like Party Hard also meant that the play strategy of dealing with those steal effects didn't work, of saving up your hand and banking for a big burst turn. Well, the person's also running token generation, so Party Hard just says, I don't care. I'm just going to rip apart all your options. It's the same thing as Jerkface, right? I can't do anything this turn, so I'm going to save my action tokens, and now my opponent's going to punish me on the next turn.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair. This is a bad card. It's a
really
good card,
is.
but it's a bad card.
Yeah, like any deck this goes in is not fun to play against.
This thing has no excuse. Like, if this thing crops up and starts being a problem again, it's gonna go visit the moon.
Okay, next one. Belly flop. So
X to doubt.
Explain this one, Mr. Control Player.
yeah.
No, I agree with this being here, but it needs context. It needs
Yeah, it does need some
context.
context.
Agreed.
So this isn't so much about belly flop in isolation. It is around, especially the time this card came out, where it just kind of said friends aren't a thing. There's just so much removal, and this was just like the peak of I trade my like 0 cost breezy for your like 5 cost friend. Totally fair. Where when you build around it, and especially like when it came out, you had Berry Punch and Orange Swirl, so it was like I trade your friend for your friend. Like basically just creating an environment where friends aren't playable. And like this is, I think, a big part of the reason why, like, I forget the name of the deck, the thing that Bugle ran that just didn't run friends.
Oh,
Mini Bell or something?
Mini Bell's big sister.
Oh, I think the original version was Mini Bell or something. But it was like, yeah, friends aren't playable, so let's just not play friends. And I think that's a bad situation for the game to be in. And I think now we're like, there is a lot of removal, but we do still see people play friends, and even like expensive, like single target friends. And I think that's largely just because the removal mix is different now, and the protection you have now is sufficient to be able to run those kind of friends.
Brian Parachute, things along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is difficult to look back on the era when this card came out. Like you said, this is a very contextual card to put on this list. But this really did push it over the line. And again, like Party Hard, I think there's ways that you could end up making this card a little bit more fair. Even just from a theming standpoint, you could have this so you have to retire a friend to dismiss an opposing friend with equal or lesser cost. You have a big pony belly flopping onto a smaller pony. No more bodyguard token shenanigans.
Yeah.
It wouldn't fix the
We're
Bird
gonna
Punch
change
issue.
the art on it then.
We just make Trixie fat.
Yeah.
Fatter. I'm just hoping Hithrock is watching this recording and comes in screaming and yelling. Aw. Well, not live anyway. When do you here's a question for you. When do you think the additional removal options should have stopped, or at least slowed down? When do you think the amount of removal that was present in the meta at the time was at, like, Pacha levels?
A reasonable amount.
Yes.
So EO added the so EO had the very first unconditional removal card. Like, that's how bad removal was in Premier Block. And it was like 3 cost.
Oh, well, yeah, because the other stuff was location restricted, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, technically Premier had something. Like it had the -2 power, and then if it's 0, like technically that's unconditional, but not really. And then I don't really remember what like High Magic had, but not EO, sorry. Defenders gave us this, and it also gave us something else, didn't it?
It gave us funny business.
Yeah.
It had Drinking Duo and Spitfire.
It did have Spitfire and Angel Wings.
Yeah. I mean, it really just kind of feels like it was Defenders that kind of pushed it over the edge.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Meanwhile, I'm over here being like, I didn't say how much pink removal. I said more.
Just all of it. Okay.
That's enough doom and gloom. Ivory, talk to us about some good stuff.
I don't know. I guess I can talk about a couple nice things. Let's start with Trihorn Bunyip. So, back in Marks and time, leading up into Defenders, yellow as a color was basically the bad color. There was virtually no yellow decks that were considered good, and it was mostly kind of a joke among players. Defenders of Equestria, and especially Trihorn Bunyip in that set, is when we started seeing yellow not just become more viable, but it started actually seeing play in sanctioned events. And this card in particular, you see those last 3 words, score a point? That's all yellow needed.
I mean, it also got Friends Are Always There, and Raptor Razor, and Zephyr Breeze.
Yeah, but having a card that says score a point on it, not this card. This card sucks. Go back to the good card.
I don't even know why it moved.
Anyway. I mean, yellow definitely got a lot of good stuff in Defenders, don't get me wrong, but if I was to single out one specific card that gave people the desire to actually try yellow again, I would say Trihorn Bunyip is the one.
That is about the time that we started seeing Blue Fairy and crew start pushing mono yellow.
It's when I tried yellow again. I don't remember if it was mono or not, but I definitely gave yellow another shot at this point.
It did start, doing more stuff. Of course, the problem we ran into then is people were like, hey, when we print good yellow cards, the players are happy. Let's just, never stop doing that.
Yep.
Yeah, but we're not talking about then. We're talking about before then.
True.
The before
But
times.
this was also during a time when aggro was generally just struggling to have any sort of fighting chance in the meta. So having cards like this being printed were definitely something that helped aggro a lot in getting back to relevancy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think even Cheese tried playing yellow at this time.
This was when Mimics came out. There's no way Cheese even looked in this card's direction.
Yeah, but
We'll
Mimics
talk about
wasn't.
that.
Yeah, will we? No, I don't think we will. Mimics is banned. Everyone knows it was negative for the game.
Even Bugle
See,
knows it
we
was
just
negative.
talked about it.
There you go. Next one.
Yeah. This next one, going back to what you were saying, GP, with lacking lesson plan. Purple was everywhere, control was everywhere, and the go-to strategy for that deck was Tempest Main, Grubber on their turn 1. So this is a card that absolutely needed to be printed at that time. It your opponent still got the hand knowledge, but it instead of you discarding something, you just put this into play. And putting this into play means that your opponent's being mean, so you're punishing them for being mean by giving you a better reward. You don't have to pay 1 to play it, and you get your rec reduced by 2 of whatever color you want.
Yeah, you want to take a look at what makes discard so tricky to balance, and why Tempest and Grubber, like Ivory's talking about, was so devastating when it came out. You can look at other card games, right? Look at Magic for a moment, and look at cards outside of Vintage that were one-shot discard effects. Almost universally, every single one of them says non-land card if you give your opponent a choice, or if you, as the person playing the card, get to choose what you take. And that is because taking cards from your opponent that prevent them from being able to even play the game are generally considered bad, especially the earlier they come down. And Tempest and Grubber didn't care, because entry was friends, and you can hit friends. Or entry was an event, and you can hit the event. And then you're just hosed.
Yeah, like during the sequestration meta, like there's nothing you can do about that. You basically look at your hand and you say, do I have my opponent's playing Tempest, I'm going to lose whatever entry is here. Do I have a second one that I can use when that happens?
I mean, just mull into a terrible hand so I don't lose anything good.
Yeah, or that, which is absolutely not okay for the game overall, which is why this needed to happen. Because it's entry that can go into virtually any deck, and it prevents you from losing to what or not necessarily winning against, but it prevents you from automatically getting pushed down by what at the time was the dominant deck.
And much like lacking lesson plans, it did come with kind of a hidden cost. Most of the other entry that people were running at this point in time gave you 3. Fire of Friendship did not. Fire of Friendship gave you 2 rec.
And it didn't technically give you... Well, it did. It didn't.
Yeah, it didn't make your characters that color, so you could not confront problems that needed it. But
I think motivational speech already existed at this point, so they already had that card as an option for that. Without this card and without lacking lesson plans, we would have been in for Tempest Meta 2.0 at this time. But thankfully that didn't happen.
Okay, so how about the bad stuff?
Well, these ones might be considered hot takes.
This card
or
is
not.
great.
So, first off, you be quiet. Second off, hear me out about this one. Pile of Presents was intended to be a card that stopped combo. The one pace and one shot had made a splash, had shook things up, and the intention here was to make decks like that no longer work. That did not happen. What instead happened was players took one look at this and were like, oh, so if I can force my opponent to draw cards, then I win. Hey, remember this ultra rare card that was printed last set that forced opponent to draw cards?
That terrible card that had absolutely no use.
It has use now.
All of a sudden, a top game winning strategy.
So, and the problem, so enabling a card intended to stop combo, suddenly enabling a combo is bad enough. but this card didn't actually do a good job at stopping combo on its own. It occasionally would win games by preventing your opponent from being able to do what they're trying to do with their combo, but more often than not, this card just kind of sat there and did nothing.
I mean, unless your opponent gyros for "Let's get this party started."
Yeah, but that happened, but also didn't happen. Yeah, this is definitely an example of intended design just falling flat on its face.
I'm still not even convinced that the devs at this time thought that this was going to be a good stop to combo. Like, yeah, they can make that argument, but look at what they were throwing in at the same point. They threw Magical Mailbox in that set without any playtesting.
Well,
Like
unfortunately,
you're gonna tell me they actually had good
Days
intentions
before
at
it went
heart?
to print.
Yeah, like
the explanation that we were given was that this card was intended to stop combo. Therefore,
I
I also challenge whether that's true or not, but that is what we were given, so that's what I'm rolling with.
I'm not denying that that is the explanation that was given. I'm just pressing X to doubt.
I had a lot of fun with this card. I think it was good.
I also had a lot of fun with this card. I also think it's a good card. I think it's terrible for the game and was terrible for the game when it was printed.
I also have a lot of fun with this card. I also think it was fun. It. I don't think it contributed anything positive.
It let us run Pile.
Yes, it did. I don't think it contributed.
It got us
positive.
a song.
It did get us a song.
It got us a song. That's fair. All right, more bad cards. You really do have some spicy takes here, by the way.
Yes,
I
that's
don't
another
actually-
spicy take.
I don't actually think this one is that spicy. I think this card makes decks stale. Like when this card came out, every deck was running this, and to this day, almost every deck at least considers running this. It's no rec required. It's 2 costs, which means you can play it on turn 1 if you really want to. I don't know why you would, but you can. It gets your main +3 power, which means your main can now probably confront every problem in your problem deck by itself. And you can just start frightening your opponent's stuff. Aggro runs this, control runs this, farm runs this. I mean, I don't know. When I see cards like this, I'm like, okay, well, this is a card that every single person is going to run, no matter what they're doing. Now, obviously, not every person chooses to run this. There's arguments for why you wouldn't choose not to run it, but I mean, really, I don't see this being anything but negative for the game. Cards that are designed like this.
Okay, look, think back to when you were a kid. Think back to when, like,
do not give me the Timmy argument.
No. This is not the Timmy argument. Think back to when a blockbuster movie from Disney would come out. One of, like, the golden age of Disney movies. Lion King comes out in theaters or something like that, right? And everyone's going nuts about it, and every fast food restaurant is producing, the toys that are there, and all of the Toys R Us stores, which still existed at that point in time, have the hot new item you got to get for Christmas that comes out of that. That's all this is. The movie came out, they printed the toy, buy our toys. Had to have it.
Buy our sticks.
I mean, that's fine, but they could have at least made the stick cost 4 or something.
It did, and it sucked.
It was really bad at 4.
I mean, that was just the immediate answer. I mean, obviously, there's ways you can tweak this, but I mean, it's a strong card that just goes in so much. It makes you just get so tired of seeing the same cards in every deck.
Let me pitch this to you as an interesting question. If the second ability just said, pay 1 and exhaust this card to frighten an opposing friend, would that make the card healthier or less healthy?
If everything else was the same, you're asking me if you just removed the face-off part?
Yes.
Why on earth would that be healthier?
Chaos.
Because it doesn't start face-offs.
Face-offs are dangerous.
I think that's a double-edged sword.
I think that if you remove the face-off part of it, that no,
In
I
most
still
situations,
think that's worse.
it's incredibly rare that you don't win the face-off.
Yes, but sometimes you flip your own mysterious disappearance.
This card existed in the meta with AJ. Think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
Explain that to me. Who in their right mind?
I completely
thought
forgot that
was a good
AJ
idea?
was still legal when this card came out.
Yeah,
I want-
she sure was.
I want you to listen to me very carefully. I want you to buy some apples.
So you agree with me then that this card is negative or was negative when it came out and still does continue to have negative impact?
I think in the context of the meta when this card came out, it probably should have been delayed a set. And I blame that more on the fact that the top deck at that point in time was playing hard control, and this gave that deck a means of being able to confront its own problems with a single character and still push control, and that was bad. Also, I think Doctor Who's was still legal at the time, so like, I think the face-off part of this is actually the most disgusting part. I think if you remove the face-off part and maybe made the ability cost 2, that the card would have been fine.
Oof, 2 cost. No one
But
would guard it.
2 cost, but guaranteed frighten.
Oh. Maybe. The +3 power on this is actually super impactful.
It is, and I don't think the +3 power is an issue. I think if there was a colorless resource that just said your main character has +3 power and it was unique,
and it costs 2, I think it would see play.
I think it would see play. I think it'd be fine. It's that last ability that is, again, it's kind of like the old money thing where you have a powerful effect here, and then you're like, what if we just sprinkle a little more? Oops.
Yeah. And it
Spill the
there
entire
are-
MSG container into
there are
the
some
ramen.
decks where this card just says you can't play friends, or your friends are useless.
Anemoy asks, would people worry as much about resource removal if Stick's not out there?
I think there's a lot of other resources that still matter.
Yeah, but Stick abuse is definitely a thing.
Yeah.
Stick abuse is the thing. Pages is here in chat, or at least was a few moments ago, so maybe he'll be kind enough to link his compilation video. We'll see if he does.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with that opinion in the framing that you're provided. I think that the problem is just everything that comes after main phase there.
I do think that this card is not as negative now as it used to be, but it definitely does still have that effect on things.
That's fair. All right, Mr. Arakat.
So we get to speed run this because I don't have a whole lot of battery left. We'll see where this goes. Okay, so this is technically a print and play card, but I'm gonna put this out there because having 2 power on your starting color opens up mono strategies. It's very simple.
I mean, it does.
Yeah, and you don't have to dedicate as much entry at the one rec level.
Mhm.
Yes, but it also means in your primary or your only color, you can start with 2 rec things. That significantly increases the number of cards you can do something with on turns like 1 through 3.
Yeah, now you can play Jerkface on turn 1.
Seems good. Ship it.
SGTM.
That's a valid point. It's another starting problem choice that you can have. You're not going to run it every single time, but it does expand deck building options, especially for mains who struggle heavily in the early game. It also lets you confront with Grogar on turn 1, and who doesn't love that, right? That's clearly fine.
All right, I changed my mind. Shove this down into bad cards.
Wow, that didn't take much convincing.
Yep, terrible card.
Like, you're giving up a lot, but that advantage is still pretty big.
It's one of those things that, again, just said, if you're falling behind, it's not as bad. This gets harder for your opponent, and it does good things for you. So, and you're right. Removing the need... I think the other thing that this card ended up doing is reduce the amount of cards that you would end up having to play in your deck that were entry cards in your primary color. Remember when that used to be a thing?
No.
When you'd have a main with one color and you'd have to play a vanilla entry into that same color in order to get the necessary rec to do other stuff.
It's been so long.
I do remember that, actually. That was awful.
It was bad. It did not feel good. It does not spark joy. But Buckball definitely helps provide a situation where that is not required. So, yeah, I agree. Good choice, Ara.
Next card.
Okay, so this one's a little more spicy.
Pretty princess.
Okay, 1, she's pretty. 2, she's mean. Any further No. This is a lovely safety valve against stuff exhausting being too good.
Wait, this means we
What's
could
that?
unban
No.
Saloon of Blue.
No. Stop it. Get some help.
This did come out in the set following Carboloader, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't
Yes.
remember what set that came out in.
And ATO was still out there, and Guidance Counselor was still out there.
F-Stop was legal.
F-Stop was legal.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is stuff turning sideways gave you a lot of value, and this says no. This continued to say no for quite some time, and in fact, she can still say no.
It's real annoying when you have like 7 AT generators out and then Nightmare Star shows up.
It's also worth noting, although it's not a format that we, regulate, Nightmare Star is the most apropos name, as this card is probably the single most defining troublemaker in the Nightmare format.
Hi, look at all these things you can't do because I'm here.
I enjoy that you say we don't regulate that, because like its defining trait of that format is that it's unregulated.
No, there are regulations, they're just very tiny. And they say dumb things like, if you run the Gallus that's misprinted and you flip your main over, have fun.
You no longer have a main.
Or, at the start of every round, we're going to flip a coin and see how the first to confront rule works.
Yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it.
It is nice as well that by making this card epic, you actually give the player a built-in method of getting rid of it if they decide they want to try to leverage exhausting cards, but it's not free. It's not like Grogar where you can just banish this and get additional value. You have to actually work to get rid of it, but you do get a reward for doing so, and it does come with its own built-in removal method. So, like, it's actually kind of a nuanced effect, but I do really like it. Also, the card is just completely gorgeous. and
Like I said, she's pretty
impossible
and
to
she's
find.
mean.
It's really hard to find.
His feathers took all the copies. Very pretty.
You blame her?
No.
Okay, so talk to us about the cards that make you hiss.
Well, all of them to start with, but
This is a hot take.
no, I really don't think this is a hot take.
I
think
agree.
this is
I agree with your reasoning, but
I
Pretty
think
hot.
this is rather cold. So, back in Premiere, for those, what was it, 4 or 5 months,
mhm.
however long that took between Premiere and Canterlot Nights, this card is you answer this or you die. If this hits the field, your turns are numbered. It's not a big number. And no one has removal or ways to mess up confronts. Now, admittedly, we didn't know how to play the game back then either, so but
Hey, like in Premiere, all of removal could hit this card.
Yeah,
Yes,
downright dangerous can hit this card.
Downright
all
dangerous.
one piece of removal.
No, downright dangerous and not on the list.
Not on the list was in Canterlot Nights.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So all one piece of removal.
You also had Pinkie Pie.
Yeah, there was a
or-
friend that had removal.
Responsibility pie was dismiss a friend.
but it was
which
dismiss.
costs, what,
It was
4?
no. It was dismiss a friend here, wasn't it? Location restricted.
And when
I
you
don't
win
remember,
when you
but-
win a problem face off or something.
No.
Anyway,
It
it's
was,
all bad.
it was
Yeah.
location restricted. And hey, look, this card goes home, so it doesn't even work.
Yeah, so it's bad.
Yeah. That's
Anyway,
fair.
yeah, if you don't answer this, you're just dead. And if you have someone who can consistently land one of these against you, you are unhappy. And also, these are very expensive.
It is interesting seeing the difference between this card and Nightlighter. Nightlighter comes out in the set where immediate events are printed, and there's 4 sets worth of interaction before that point, and it's, in my opinion, okay. RTO comes out in the first set with so few ways of interacting in a color that was generally not playing aggro then, and just does things that are not acceptable. To my wallet.
I mean, accurate. Like, and she stayed relevant into the Canterlot Knights meta.
She stayed so relevant, we've made a theoretical supplement card based around her.
Well, see, I don't think she's really remained relevant beyond about Crystal Games, because that's when, like, just the way that the game is played and the cards available changed so much that she just wasn't worth it anymore.
I actually would argue that she was still relevant in Absolute Discord, but maybe not as so. Farm was really taking off during then, but aggro decks were still running 3 of these.
Uh-huh.
Right,
Past-
but you needed those to keep up at that point, and she
Past
just
it.
kind of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Past AD, I think you're right. That being said, if this card was legal in core, you better believe I'd run this thing. I'd make it work. I'd do it. You know what I run in the blue-white decks instead? Pony Pirate. Rarity Pony Pirate. You know how many points she gets me? 2. Once. You know what her stat line is? The same thing as this card.
basically use monocolor.
Yeah, this card's easier. All right, maybe this card was a little pushed.
Yeah. See, there you go.
It like Premiere was funny. You had like full Steam, and then you had RTO.
You're forgetting the best one. You're forgetting about Apple Stars.
I don't even remember this card.
It's so bad. It's like Studious and some other crap.
You're forgetting the worst card.
The
Blue
resource?
Spike Baby
Spike
Dragon.
Baby
Spike
Dragon.
Baby Dragon.
Yeah, that was indeed a card that existed. All right, you got room for one more hot take, Ara. What do you got for us?
Well, that's good because I got about that much room for battery. I'm not
I
kidding. It's
mean-
actually getting down there. Okay, so we've touched on this multiple times leading up to this point, but okay. So this is the entourage, right? Okay, when the entourage needs no introduction, there's a problem. And this entourage, this doesn't need an introduction. You know who this is. You know what he does. You hate his dumb little face.
You know what's fun? Playing this card
Six
times.
Yeah.
or more.
You are right. I do hate his dumb little face. My heart drops into my stomach every time a Grubber is uncovered.
This card makes me not like Michael Pena anymore.
Was that the VA?
Yes, that was the VA. Like I see him in the Marvel movies, and I'm like, I already don't like this movie now.
He made me discard cards that one time. Yeah, you're right. There's really no excuse with this.
Flavor, 10 out of 10. Mechanics, I want to die.
Yeah.
That is the most succinct summary, and I think you've really nailed it there. See Michael Pena at the airport start yelling at him about random discard. Someone please film themselves doing this.
They're going to be so confused, and then you're going to get hauled out of the airport. Maybe don't.
Like,
Nah, Michael Pena would actually probably roll with it for about 2 minutes, and then you'd get in trouble.
That'd be pretty good. I want Michael Pena to come to a PonyCon so he can sign all my Grubbers.
You would not want to pay that autograph fee.
No, I would happily pay the autograph fee. I don't want to pay the appearance fee.
you don't want to pay the increased badge cost for whatever the appearance
Correct.
fee would be.
Yeah,
Correct.
start bringing like actual Hollywood stars to PonyCons, and suddenly badge prices are a lot higher.
$1,000 for a badge.
Yeah.
Maybe no. What would you have him sign, though?
There's just nothing on this card that is defendable. It flips for 5. It has 0 bonus points. It triggers whether it's uncovered or put into play. And it lets you choose it. It's just,
I mean, it was specifically designed to work with Tempest.
Yeah, well, it did.
It did work.
It was dumb. It was real dumb.
Perfectly.
Good choice, all right. We'd also be curious in comments on the YouTube video or just in discussion on Discord if you want to share your own thoughts on cards that were positive or negative for the game overall. It's an interesting thing to think about. So, since Aura's battery is running low, we'll quickly remind people that Jokin Luna is running some CCG tournaments at Ponyville Ciderfest here this upcoming weekend.
There will be prizes.
There will be prizes. It'll be fun. We will also be in attendance, and though we are not running the CCG events, we are running a panel. It is our second version of the Design a Card panel, which actually means it's your second version of the Design a Card panel. If you've ever wanted to make a card, if you've ever wanted to offer feedback, if you think we are a bunch of idiots and can't design our way out of a cardboard box, because we haven't designed another cardboard box.
Thank you for going there. I was going to if you didn't.
Then come to Ciderfest and design another cardboard box.
Yep.
There might be some spicy card designs that could come out of it. You could contribute to them.
You could. Aura might have chosen to troll me slightly. Maybe.
Slightly. No, the players can choose to troll you even harder. You'll
This
know
is
how.
true.
Don't worry.
This is true. I'm sure you've got something evil planned. But you're only going to be able to find that out. I believe our panel
Saturday,
is
10
We are-
a.m.?
Yep, we are in the Barley Room Saturday 10:30 a.m.
10:30 a.m. or 10 a.m.?
I'm pretty sure it's 10:30 a.m. I hope it's not 10 because I definitely announced that it was 10:30.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, come to Ciderfest. Anything else we have for now?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, that will about wrap up our discussion on this topic for today then.
Yes, 10:30.
10:30. Cool.
Thank God.
Yeah, get a little extra sleep. We would like to give a big shout out to all our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your regular support. If you aren't currently a patron and you enjoy what we do, please consider donating. Doing so does enable us to continue making content like this and lets you earn some great perks as a bonus. If you have comments or questions you'd like to send our way, feel free to reach out to us through Facebook, Twitter, or email. If you're a patron, you can also chat live with us on Slack any day, most times, unless we're sleeping. Finally, if you're looking to watch any of our previous videos, including tournament recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel, linked just below the stream. With all that said, thank you to each and every one of our viewers, both here now and watching this recording later. We are, as always, Commentary as Magic. I am, as always, Grand Paws.
Big Cheese.
Arcat, and
Ivory Starlight.
And we'll see you at Ciderfest.
it would have been very funny if my battery ran out right there.
Yep. It also would have been funny if you left the channel again and then came back in. Bye.
Bye.